The sky over Delhi hums with the rhythm of routine. Controllers, pilots, passengers, all moving through a script that's played 1,000 times before. But tonight, two bright dots on a flickering radar screen are about to rewrite it. Inside Delhi approach control, the voice of controller VK Dutta cuts through the static, calm, measured, confident. Saudi 763, climb to flight level 140. Kazakh 1907, descend and maintain flight level 150. Two giants, a Saudi Boeing 747 and a Kazakh Ilyushin-76, obey without question. One climbs through the thick evening haze. The other sinks slowly toward the Indian capital, each trusting that calm voice to keep them safe. Inside the Saudi cockpit, the crew scan their instruments. Smooth climb, stable readings, no sign of danger. Inside the Kazakh jet, the flight engineer leans forward, translating English instructions into Russian. The captain nods, eyes fixed on the altimeter. Between them, just 1,000 feet, a margin thinner than the blink of an eye. On the radar, the two dots drift closer. Dutta wipes sweat from his brow, juggling 5 voices on the radio. Domestic arrivals, military traffic, and now, these 2 international flights crossing the same invisible corridor. The system should warn him if they get too close. But in 1996 Delhi, that warning doesn't exist. Above the clouds, the Saudi 747 pierces the gray like a silver spear. Below it, the Kazakh freighter dives through the same cloud bank, unseen. In the next 60 seconds, one wrong word, one wrong number, will decide the fate of everyone on board. They trusted the same voice to keep them safe. But in less than a minute, both will vanish from the sky. Title appears on screen. How one person caused India's worst mid-air crash. Saudi Flight 763. A quiet afternoon in Delhi. The sun is sinking behind the haze, painting the horizon gold as one flight prepares to leave, and another heads in to land. At Shymkent International Airport in Kazakhstan, a 4-engine Ilyushin-76 rumbles on the tarmac. It's old, heavy Soviet-built, the workhorse of a collapsing airline fighting to stay alive. On board are 27 traders from Kyrgyzstan, hauling empty bags and high hopes. They're flying to New Delhi to buy fabric, cheap textiles they'll sell back home for profit. To them, this isn't luxury, it's survival. The captain, Alexander Cherepanov, has thousands of hours in Soviet cargo planes. Beside him, his first officer and flight engineer, calm, experienced, loyal. In the back, a radio operator and a navigator complete the 5-man crew. Only one of them, the radio operator, Igor Rep, speaks enough English to talk to air traffic control. He'll be the voice between Delhi and the men flying the jet. At 3:55 p.m., the Ilyushin lifts off into the pale Kazakh sky, bound south toward India. It will be a smooth, uneventful 3.5-hour flight. Meanwhile, in Delhi, a different kind of giant rests on the runway, a Saudi Arabian Airlines Boeing 747. Its 4 engines gleam under the fading sun, carrying 312 souls, mostly Indian workers returning to the Gulf after visiting families back home. Men with calloused hands, folded passports, and photographs tucked in shirt pockets, heading back to earn another year of wages. At the controls, Captain Khalid Al-Shubaili, 44, a veteran Saudi pilot. First Officer Nazir Khan, an American. Flight Engineer Ahmed Idris, 36, sharp and composed. They've rested for more than 70 hours, alert, fit, and familiar with Delhi's skies. At 6:33 p.m., the controller's voice crackles through. Saudi 763 cleared for takeoff, runway 28. The jumbo rolls down the runway, engines roaring like thunder. As it lifts into the dusky sky, its nose cuts through clouds the color of ash. At that same moment, 100 kilometers away, the Kazakh Ilyushin begins its descent into Delhi. Both planes are talking to the same controller. Both are flying along the same narrow airway, Gulf 452. 2 paths, 1 corridor. 2 voices on the same frequency. 2 destinies about to collide. Neither crew knows it yet, but the skies above Delhi have just set the stage for the deadliest mid-air collision in India's history. The skies over Delhi are crowded, far more than they were ever designed to be. Unlike the sprawling multi-lane corridors of Western airspace, Delhi in 1996 has only one civilian route for both arrivals and departures. It's a narrow aerial highway called Gulf 452. a single invisible line threading through one of the busiest skies in South Asia. On paper, it works. In practice, it's chaos waiting to happen. That evening at the Delhi Air Traffic Control Tower, controller VK Dutta 43 sits in a room filled with hum and static. He's sharp, calm, and experienced, a mid-level controller who's handled countless flights before. But tonight he has 5 aircraft demanding his attention. 2 domestic airliners crossing Delhi, 1 U.S. Air Force transport, the inbound Kazakh Ilyushin, and the outbound Saudi jumbo jet. He doesn't have modern tools. No digital displays, no altitude tags, no automatic conflict warnings. Only a primary radar, an old system that paints each aircraft as a glowing green dot. That dot tells him where the plane is, but not how high it's flying. To know that, he must ask the pilots directly. He depends entirely on what they tell him, and on his ability to trust that they understood him correctly. Outside the windows, the sky darkens into gray. Over the radio, voices blend: English, Russian, Arabic, Hindi. The static is constant. Dutta's hand moves between switches and scribbled notes. Each plane has its own paper strip, where he writes clearances by hand. That's his only record. Lines of ink keeping hundreds of lives in order. He clears one flight after another, voice calm but steady. Saudi 763, climb to flight level 140. Kazakh 1907, descend and maintain 150. 1,000 feet of separation, perfectly safe. But Dutta doesn't know that both aircraft are on the exact same route, flying head-on, and both have their eyes fixed on his instructions. They can't see each other through the clouds. They can't hear each other clearly through the noise. And the radar in front of Dutta, just 2 dots, offers no warning. For now, it all seems normal. 2 flights, 1 controller, 1 narrow sky, all depending on clear words, clear understanding, and timing. But in this sky, even a single mistranslation can turn routine into tragedy. At 6:37 p.m., both planes are now under Delhi approach control. On the controller's radar, the dots move steadily toward each other, one climbing, one descending. 1,000 feet apart and visible to one another, separated only by words. In the Saudi cockpit, Captain Khalid Al-Shubaili sits relaxed, scanning his instruments. The Boeing 747 is climbing smoothly through 10,000 feet. First Officer Nazir Khan calls it in. Delhi approach, Saudi 763. At flight level 100, the reply crackles back through the speakers. Calm. Confident, Saudi 763, roger. Climb and maintain flight level 140. Khalid acknowledges. The throttles slide forward. 4 Pratt & Whitney engines roar, lifting 312 people higher into the cloud-choked evening. At that same moment, the Kazakh Ilyushin-76, Flight 1907, is closing in from the northwest. They've just crossed a waypoint called Lunka, beginning their descent. Their radio operator, Igor Rep, calls out to Delhi in accented English. Delhi approach. Kazakh 1907 at flight level 250, requesting descent. The response is immediate. Kazakh 1907, descend and maintain flight level 200. Rep translates it quickly into Russian for his captain and navigator. Inside the cockpit, the voices overlap. English from the radio, Russian commands, numbers converted into meters. Even a simple descent instruction must pass through 3 people before reaching the pilot's hands. As the Ilyushin drops through 20,000 feet, Dutta issues the next clearance. Kazakh 1907, descend flight level 150. Report reaching. Rep repeats it. 15,000 feet. But 15 and 14 sound dangerously alike over static, especially when translated into meters. The captain nods, eyes on the altimeter. The aircraft begins descending again, engines humming quietly. Inside Delhi Tower, Dutta's pen scratches across paper. He notes both planes' altitudes, 14,000 and 15,000, confident they'll pass safely. He hasn't told either crew that another jet is close by. Procedure doesn't require it. He trusts the numbers. Outside, the skies over northern India are thick with haze, a dull orange smog that hides everything beyond a few miles. No one can see the other plane. No one can see the danger. For now, everything sounds routine. 2 calm voices on the radio, separated by language, speed, and faith in one man's control. But in the Kazakh cockpit, confusion is quietly growing. The captain believes they're level at 15,000 feet. The flight engineer thinks they're still descending. And the only man who can ask, the radio operator, is too busy listening for the next call from Delhi. They are less than 80 kilometers apart now, and descending fast, 30,000 feet over India. The Kazakh Ilyushin-76 hums through thin air. Inside its cockpit, 5 men, 5 different jobs, and 1 fragile bridge of language. Unlike Western jets, this Soviet-built aircraft has a 5-person crew. Captain Alexander Cherepanov, flying the plane. First Officer Amarek Jangirov, assisting. Flight Engineer Alexander Chuprov, managing power. Navigator Jahanbek Aripayev, buried in charts below deck. Radio operator Igor Rep, the only man fluent in English. When Duda in Delhi gives instructions, Rep alone can understand. He translates them from English to Russian for the pilots, and they respond by repeating numbers back to him. Then he translates again to English for ATC. 5 men, 2 languages, and 3 conversions for every command. A single phrase has to pass through 6 hands and 2 minds before it becomes action. At 6:38 p.m., Delhi clears the Kazakh jet to flight level 150, 15,000 feet. The instruction is routine, but in the static-filled headset, 150 sounds dangerously like 140. Rep translates. Meters and feet blur together. 15,000 feet becomes 4,500 meters. The navigator calculates, rounding down. The plane continues descending. Meanwhile, in the Saudi 747, the climb is smooth, engines humming at perfect rhythm. Captain Khalid glances out the window. Nothing but white haze. They're about to pass 11,000 feet. He checks his instruments, calm as ever. Maintain climb to 140. The first officer nods. No one on that plane has the slightest idea that death is heading straight toward them. Back in the Kazakh cockpit, tension builds quietly. The crew chatters in Russian, short bursts, numbers, confirmations. Rep is listening to ATC, half translating, half monitoring. Then the controller's voice crackles through again. Kazakh 1907. Report reaching 150. Rep replies automatically. Delhi approach. Kazakh 1907. Now reached flight level 150. 46 miles from Delhi. But they haven't reached it. The black box will later reveal they are actually at 6,400 feet and still descending. The report is false. Not by intent, but by confusion. Duda accepts the call without question. He has no radar altitude data. On his screen, both aircraft are just glowing dots. He marks down the clearance and moves on to the next task. Inside the Ilyushin, Rep relays the next instruction. Traffic 12 o'clock. Reciprocal. Saudi Boeing 747 at 10 miles. Level 140. The captain looks up sharply. A 747 close by? He peers through the windscreen, but the sky is thick. Visibility near 0. The navigator leans over the chart, muttering coordinates. The flight engineer calls out a steady descent rate. No one questions the altitude, but a seed of doubt has been planted. Are we sure? The captain asks quietly. Rep hesitates. Maintain level 150, he translates. The cockpit falls into silence. A silence filled with hums, dials, and the sound of descent. They are now less than 15 kilometers apart. Inside Delhi control, Duda notes both aircraft crossing in 3 minutes, confident in his separation plan. He still doesn't know the Kazakh jet is dropping hundreds of feet below its assigned altitude. The crews can't see each other. The radar can't see their heights. And the clock is running out. 6:39 p.m., 30 miles north of Delhi. On the radar screen in the tower, 2 dots are closing in on each other. To controller VK Dutta, they look normal. Just another pair of flights crossing paths 1,000 feet apart. He leans closer to his microphone. Kazakh 1907, how far from Delhi are you now? Igor Rep's voice comes back through static. Now reached flight level 150, 46 miles from Delhi on 270 radial. Duda's pen scratches another note across his strip of paper. Everything seems fine. He doesn't know the Ilyushin is still hundreds of feet below its assigned altitude, descending toward the Saudi jet's path. Seconds later, Duda calls the Saudi crew. Saudi 763, maintain flight level 140. Stand by for hire. Captain Khalid replies, calm as always. Maintaining 140, Saudi 763. Everything sounds routine. The radio falls silent for a moment, the calm before the storm. Inside the Kazakh cockpit, the air feels heavier. The navigator stares at the radar screen, struggling to find the oncoming traffic. The captain scans the gray sky ahead. Nothing. Only cloud. Then Duda calls again. Kazakh 1907. Traffic 12 o'clock reciprocal. Saudi Boeing 747 at 10 miles, level 140. Report in sight. Rep translates rapidly into Russian. The captain looks up again, squinting through haze. No visual contact. Rep keys his mic. Now looking. Kazakh 1907. It will be his last transmission. Inside the Saudi cockpit, everything feels smooth. First Officer Nazir Khan adjusts the throttle as the jet cruises at 14,000 feet. Then a call from Delhi. Saudi 763, traffic 12 o'clock, reciprocal. Kazakh Ilyushin-76, 6 miles, level 150. Report in sight. Khalid answers. Looking for traffic, Saudi 763. The controller exhales, relieved. In his mind, the two aircraft are 1,000 feet apart. They'll pass safely, one above, one below. 40 p.m. Inside the Kazakh jet, something isn't right. The altimeter needle is spinning downward, 16,000 feet. 15,000, 14,800. The engineer glances at the instruments but says nothing. The first officer is flying blind in thick cloud, unaware they've crossed their assigned altitude. Suddenly, Rep's voice breaks the silence. Sharp, panicked. Hold the level. The captain jerks his head up. What level were we given? The engineer blurts out, maintain, but doesn't say which level. Rep shouts again, louder this time. Keep to 150. Don't descend. The captain slams the autopilot disconnect, pulling back hard. The engines spool up, screaming for thrust. Outside, a white wall of cloud hides everything, until a flash of silver tears through it. Rep's final words explode through the cockpit. Get to 150, why? Because on 140, that one. And then in an instant it appears, the massive nose of the Saudi 747, charging straight toward them. The collision is instantaneous. The 747's tail slices clean through the Ilyushin's fuselage, ripping off its entire tail section. For a split second, both aircraft fuse into a single fireball in the sky. Then gravity takes over, two giants fall. Debris blooms over the fields of Haryana like burning stars. In Delhi Tower, Dutta watches in disbelief as the two green dots merge and then disappear forever. The night sky above northern India lights up like dawn. A massive flash rips through the clouds and then silence. Moments later, pieces of flaming metal begin raining down over the farmlands of Charki Dadri, a quiet farming district 60 miles west of Delhi. Villagers look up in confusion. Some think a meteor has struck. Others hear the roar and run toward the fields where debris the size of buses burns bright orange against the soil. Smoldering fabric, luggage, seat cushions, and the twisted remains of two colossal aircraft. Emergency sirens begin to wail. Local police, fire brigades, and villagers rush toward the wreckage, but what they find is beyond belief. The ground is scattered with torn fuselage panels and engines buried deep in mud. Fires burn across 7 kilometers of farmland, a trail of devastation stretching as far as the eye can see. At the northern edge lies a massive crater, blackened and smoking. Investigators will later confirm it's where the Saudi 747 hit the earth, nose first, disintegrating on impact. Farther ahead, a shattered section of the Kazakh Ilyushin's tail rests alone, eerily intact, marking the start of the wreckage path. It's the first clue that tells them which aircraft struck first. The explosion was so violent that people in Delhi, nearly an hour away, saw the flash on the horizon. Every engine, every tank of jet fuel, every ton of aluminum ignited in a single instant. By the time rescuers reach the site, there is nothing left to save. The people are gone. Passengers, crew, traders, workers, and all perished in seconds. Families waiting at the Delhi airport watched the departure screens freeze. Hours pass before the first official statement. 2 aircraft have collided near Charki Dadri. No survivors are expected. In villages nearby, fires continue to burn through the night. The only sound, the hiss of cooling metal and the faint crackle of flames eating through the remains of 2 flights that were never meant to meet. The morning after the crash, the farmlands of Charki Dadri resemble a battlefield. Smoke rises from blackened fields. Burnt aluminum glints under the pale dawn. Rescue teams move silently through wreckage that stretches for miles. Every few meters they mark a discovery. A body, a document, a piece of aircraft skin. Two giants have fallen, and the question now is simple. Why? The first clues within hours, search crews recover both flight data recorders and cockpit voice recorders, the black boxes. But India in 1996 doesn't yet have the technology to decode them, so the Saudi recorder is sent to London and the Kazakh one to Moscow for analysis. Meanwhile, investigators from India, Saudi Arabia, and Kazakhstan converge on the crash site. The wreckage path tells a story. At the very start of the debris trail lies the tail of the Kazakh Ilyushin, separated cleanly, with no signs of explosion or fire before impact. For the tail to be the first piece to fall, it means the collision began there, with the 747 stabilizer slicing it off mid-air. That discovery reveals something chilling. At the moment of impact, the Kazakh jet was below the Saudi plane, but according to air traffic control records, the Kazakh was cleared to be above it, at 15,000 feet. Somehow it had descended too far. So what went wrong? The ATC tapes investigators replay the ATC communications from Delhi Tower. They hear everything, every call, every acknowledgement. There are no mistakes from controller VK Duda. He gave correct instructions. The Saudi flight to climb and maintain 14,000 feet. The Kazakh flight to descend and maintain 15,000 feet. And both crews read back those instructions correctly. Duda couldn't have known that the Ilyushin was sinking lower than it should. His radar only showed dots, no altitude information, no alarms. He did everything right. And still, 349 people were dead. The black box returns. 2 weeks later, the results arrive from London and Moscow. The Saudi flight data is clear. A smooth, uneventful climb, leveled off precisely at 14,000 feet as instructed. The Kazakh data, however, is chaos. Its altitude trace looks like a jagged staircase. Steady for a few seconds, then sharp drops, brief climbs, and more drops. It's erratic, unlike anything investigators had seen before. The cockpit voice recorder reveals the reason. The Kazakh crew were not sure what altitude they were supposed to hold. They'd misunderstood their clearance, thinking the Saudi plane was at 15,000 feet, and that they were supposed to be at 14,000. It was a fatal mix-up of numbers and language. Inside their cockpit, panic built slowly. The captain kept asking what altitude to maintain. The flight engineer gave vague answers. Only the radio operator, Rep, the sole English speaker, none seemed aware something was wrong. But by the time he shouted, "Hold the level," it was already too late. Language, training, and the human factor. The investigation exposes a pattern. Kazakhstan's aviation industry, still adjusting after the fall of the Soviet Union, trained crews largely in Russian. English, the universal language of aviation, was spoken poorly or not at all by most flight crews. The Ilyushin cockpit itself added confusion. Half its altimeters displayed altitude in feet, the other half in meters. During descent, the navigator converted clearances manually using charts. Under stress, one conversion error could mean hundreds of feet lost, and that's exactly what happened. The conclusion. The final report is devastatingly simple. Kazakh 1907 descended below its assigned altitude due to miscommunication and human error. Saudi 763 was exactly where it was cleared to be. Delhi ATC acted correctly, but lacked modern radar and warning systems. The board closes with one haunting sentence. The accident was the result of a breakdown in communication, linguistic, procedural, and human. The Charki Dadri disaster wasn't caused by a storm, a failure, or sabotage. It was caused by words, misunderstood, mistranslated, and spoken too late. In the weeks that follow, the world demands answers. How could two modern aircraft, both in contact with air traffic control, collide in clear skies? Was it the controller's fault? The pilots? Or something deeper? A system built on fragile assumptions. The Indian government appoints Justice R.C. Lahoti to lead a full board of inquiry. His team reconstructs every second of both flights, every altitude call, every phrase, every pause. It doesn't take long to see that while the crash had many causes, one man's misunderstanding started the chain. The radio operator's burden in the Kazakh Ilyushin cockpit. Only Igor Rep, the radio operator, spoke English. He was the crew's lifeline to Delhi ATC. Every instruction had to pass through him, English to Russian, Russian to English, under pressure, through static. with lives depending on each syllable. When ATC cleared them to maintain 150, Rep repeated the phrase correctly. But the first officer, flying the aircraft, used a metric altimeter calibrated in meters, not feet. The number didn't make sense to him, so he looked to the navigator, who quickly converted it and rounded it down. That small rounding error made the Ilyushin drift lower. Meanwhile, the captain, assuming the descent was complete, stopped cross-checking the altimeter. In the confusion, no one realized they were already passing below 15,000 feet, toward the Saudi jet. Rep, still listening to radio chatter, suddenly heard ATC mention traffic at level 140. It triggered panic. He turned, saw the altimeter dropping, and shouted, "Hold the level!" But in that cockpit of 5 men and 5 voices, it was too late to understand who he was talking to, or why. Clearing the controller when the tapes were reviewed, Controller Duda's actions were declared faultless. He had issued correct clearances and confirmed proper readbacks, but he lacked the equipment that could have saved everyone. Secondary radar that shows altitude and TCS, a collision avoidance system now standard worldwide. Back then, India had neither. He watched the 2 dots merge on his radar, unaware that the Kazakh crew had misheard him, mistranslated the altitude, and descended into the path of the 747. The final verdict, Justice Lahoti's report, is clear. The probable cause of the accident was the failure of the Kazakh crew to maintain assigned altitude due to misunderstanding of air traffic control instructions. But beneath the technical wording lies something deeply human. 5 men in 1 cockpit, all trying to do their job, undone by language, fatigue, hierarchy, and seconds of hesitation. It wasn't recklessness. It wasn't defiance. It was confusion. And the cost was 349 lives.